and welcome to Red Bank Public Library's inaugural edition of Creepy Chronicles. My name is Kirsten, and I'm a librarian at the Red Bank Public Library. This Halloween season, we thought it would be fun to record a series of videos of ghost stories read by me to help you get into the holiday Halloween spirit. I am joined here by my friend, who has no name, but perhaps as the weeks go on, you would like to drop some comments or maybe drop into the library with a suggestion for a name. And I could perhaps pick one and name him by the time these videos are done at the end of October. Now, these ghost stories that I will be reading will be a bit scary, so it is up to you if you want this to be a family viewing or perhaps just for adults. Tonight, I am reading a story from a book entitled Short and Shivery, which is a collection of 30 different ghost stories, most of them folklore, from around the world, either rewritten or retold by the editor. Tonight's story is entitled The Ghostly Little Girl, and it is from the California region of the United States. So if we're ready, we can begin the story. Near the turn of the century, in the seacoast town of Monterey, California, lived a widowed fisherman, Richard Coulter, and his young daughter, Maria. Their home was a weather-beaten shack of boards with a tin roof on the shore some distance from town. Maria Coulter was a pretty but strong-willed little girl. Her father worked hard, fishing for sardines, salmon, cod, tuna, and yellowtail in Monterey Bay and the Pacific Ocean, just beyond so that Maria could go to the Catholic school in town. She was very popular with the other girls who were pupils there, though a few parents did not approve of someone whose father was so poor. Maria's closest friends were Annie Kelly, Susan Cook, and Catherine Hopper. In the early spring, Maria was absent from school for several days. Her three friends asked their teachers about it, but were told only that Maria and her father had sailed out of Monterey Bay 3 days before. Their boat had last been seen by another fisherman around noon beyond Point Lobos. "But I saw her this morning on my way to school," Annie Kelly told Susan Cook and Catherine Hopper. "She was standing across the street, watching me. I waved to her, but she didn't wave back. I don't think she saw me because she ran away right after that. I didn't see her again." But once again, Maria's desk at school was empty. As her three friends walked home, they talked about her absence. "Maybe her father is sick, and she has to take care of him," Annie suggested. "Maybe she got sick herself," Susan said. "Maybe she was starting to come to school today and had to go home." "I think we should go and see what's happened to her," said Catherine decisively. The girls knew their friend lived with her father in a shanty outside of Monterey. They decided to pay a visit as soon as school was over, but it was a long walk, and they took their time poking along the beach. It was very late in the day when, far down along the shore, they could see a single cabin, the back of which was built on stilts that extended down into the water. "I bet that's Maria's house," said Annie. "I hope so," said Susan, "because it's getting pretty late. I'll be in trouble if I don't get home by supper." "Maybe we shouldn't go," said Annie. "I don't see any lights." "Don't be silly," said Catherine impatiently. "We've come this far." "But it is getting awfully late," added Susan. "I just want to see how Maria is. Then we can go right home." But by the time they reached the rundown shack, a thick, wet evening fog had crept in, heavy with the tang of salt. Walking softly and whispering to each other, the three friends climbed the stairs to the rickety front porch. It was piled high with rotting fishing nets, rusting crabbing cages, buckets, and odd bits of rope and canvas. Around the corner of the house they could see a little pier, but no boat was tied to it. Everything was quiet, except for the roar of waves hitting the shore. I don't think there's anyone home. Let's go, urged Annie, as the haunting call of a seagull cut through the foggy air. The mist was swirling so thickly around them that they could no longer see the distant roofs of Monterey. Tentacles of fog were tangled in the live oaks and pines far up the hillside. Don't be a ninny, hissed Catherine. Boldly, she knocked 1, 2, 3 times on the door. When there was no response, she pounded on the door even louder. Let's look through a window, suggested Susan. This seemed like a good idea, since clearly no one was coming to answer the door. Tiptoeing to the nearest window, the girls peeked in past ragged curtains. At first, all they saw was an empty room with a few sad pieces of furniture scattered around. An unlit kerosene lantern stood in the middle of a wooden table. Opposite the window was a single closed door. Suddenly, a strange glow began to seep under the closed door. Then the door opened slowly, and they could see Maria Coulter, framed in the glow of the unearthly light. She was standing upright, but her eyes were closed, as if she were in a deep sleep. Without a sound, the girl, like a sleepwalker, crossed the room. A moment later, the 3 friends on the porch heard the cabin's front door unlocked with a loud click, then pulled open with a squeal because the damp had swollen the wood. Annie, Susan, and Catherine looked at one another for a moment. Then they went to the open door and peered through. The room inside was empty again, and only a faint silver-gray light coming through the streaked windows. The door in the far wall was closed, though they could still see the line of curious light underneath it. Their friend had vanished. She must have gone back into the other room, said Susan. Why is she playing tricks on us? Asked Annie. I don't think we should stay here anymore. But Catherine walked bravely into the room and yelled, Maria, we just want to say hello. You can come out. She was reaching for the knob of the closed door when something stopped her. There was a smell of salt water so strong that they could almost taste the salt. The odor of fish was strong enough to make Susan hold her nose. The roar of the ocean filled the room as though it was circling the house outside. Catherine, Annie said, her voice little more than a squeak. Look, the door. Water was beginning to seep under the door, soaking the worn carpet. The 3 girls stepped back, afraid to let it touch their shoes. Abruptly, they were startled by a crash, like a huge wave hitting the other side of the door. It amazed them that the door didn't splinter from the impact. A moment later, a second blow shuttered the door. The 3 friends just gaped, too frightened to move. In the silence that followed, broken only by the gurgle of the water still seeping out under the door, they heard a ghostly voice from the other side of the door. It sounded like someone calling from underwater. Catherine, it called. Annie, Susan, I knew you'd come looking for me. I'll be with you in just a minute. There was a last boom against the door. Then a deep silence fell over the room that smelled of fish and salt and seaweed. The door began to open. There was silver light all around it. The puddle of water on the floor looked like a tide pool in the moonlight. They saw a little girl's hand, pale as whitefish, wet, and wrinkled as something that has lain in the water too long. Terrified, the 3 girls ran from the shack as fast as they could, out into the thick, wet fog. They didn't stop running until they were back in their own neighborhood. There, while they caught their breath, they tried to make some sense of their frightening experience. Had Maria been playing a trick on them? If so, why? But that didn't explain the strange light and the sound and smell of the ocean inside the house or the crash of waves against the closed door. Finally, confused and frightened, the girls decided to tell their parents what they had seen. It was Catherine's father who told them. Richard Coulter's boat sank 3 days ago. They found his body washed ashore near Point Lobos. His little girl, Maria, drowned with him, but they haven't found her body yet. The end. And that was The Ghostly Little Girl. If you are interested in its backstory of folklore, there is a little passage here that says, a much expanded version of an account found in Randall A. Reinstedt's Ghostly Tales of Old Monterey. The city of Monterey was California's historic first capital, and Mr. Reinstedt has exposed its rich vein of ghostly lore in the work cited above, and in his Ghosts, Bandits, and Legends of Old Monterey book. So, I hope you enjoyed that tale and the setting and atmosphere that was created to tell it, and I will see you all next week with a whole different ghost story to tell. In the meantime, have a great week, and keep it scary.